Hello love, welcome back. My name is Jennifer Laurel Keller and today I'm doing a mixed media lesson where I show you how to collage with old acrylic painting studies over a layered background. You might recognize these roses from a couple videos ago. I did a lesson on how to paint an acrylic study of roses on watercolor paper. And now I'm going to take it a step further to show you how to work them into a mixed media piece. So if you want to learn how to paint these roses, you can watch that video as well. You can view this lesson to simply relax and be inspired, or you can watch it twice to see what happens and again to work along with me. Just hit pause as needed to take things step by step. You can take notes if you like, and you will also find a materials list down below. Donations are appreciated. If you find this video helpful either emotionally or technically, and you're able, I will have more information down below. It takes a lot of effort to make these lessons, and it's so nice to be compensated for my work. I also have a free gift for you at the end, so stay tuned for that. All right, let's begin. All right, so I have here some scraps for my background. There are no focal points in there, just little patterns and textures. I'm putting out some acrylic matte medium, and I'm using my brush to apply the acrylic medium down to the canvas, and then I do another thin layer over the top, and that's going to seal the papers onto the canvas. You might notice that there are a couple V-shaped lines in this canvas. That's something I was going to do with this canvas but decided against it. So I'm just going to collage right over the top and it'll cover it up really nicely. So you can leave little gaps or overlap the paper depending on what you want to do. If there are gaps between the papers, we're going to paint over this layer and all of the white of the canvas will be covered up with color. So no worries there. Just fill everything in kind of in this patchwork design. And what I'm paying attention to is making sure that things seem balanced so that I have different papers on different sides of the canvas so that things have variety in each section, and also it will pull the eye around the canvas when it sees patterns mimicked on one side of the canvas to the other. You can kind of watch as I do this. I'm trying to spread out each of these prints as much as I can in a balanced way. And I'm just coating the brush enough so that there's a good amount on the canvas. You don't want it too thin or too thick. You'll notice what works once you start to do this. And by the time you're done with this one layer, you're going to understand what amount of acrylic medium to use. So it's just something that takes some practice. And we're almost done here. Just going to put down a couple more pieces. And now it's time to apply my paints to my palette. Now, because I know what's going over the top of this, it's the rose study that I did a couple videos ago, I am using a similar color palette to those roses. And what I'm going to do is just kind of lightly apply the paint. You can mix it up. I use a lot of white to make these colors light and airy. And I'm also using them transparently. So you can use dry brush, which is when there's not a lot of paint on your brush, or you can mix colors in with the acrylic medium that's still left on the palette from when you did your collage, and that will also make your colors more transparent. I'm paying special attention to softening the harsh contrast in the paper collage, so the darker papers next to the lighter papers, I'm going over the edges so that contrast is a little bit more gradual. I'm working with the transparency to allow some of the patterns to show through softly. I am mixing on the palette and on the canvas. And now this is dry, so I'm going to take a piece of chalk. I have this design element that I had in mind, which is this triangle shape. So I'm using this tile as a template, and the chalk will just wash away really nicely with the paint. So when you paint over it, it will just kind of dissolve into the paint. And I'm using more contrast up against the line, and then gradually as the paint runs out on the brush, I bring it down and it'll diffuse. It's a really hot day. I was trying to work with some drips, but it wasn't wet anymore. So now I applied more wet paint, and I'm going over that with just water at first, and it kind of takes away the paint and has it drip down. Now I have more paint in the water, so I'm using water from my jar and then some paint from the palette and just dripping it down, and that gives it just a new fun texture. And notice my rag was below the canvas to catch those drips. Alright, so now this is dry, and I'm going to use a small bright brush, which is like a flat brush, or you could use a small round brush, and I'm going to apply white to the edge just to reinforce that contrast right there, because I want that triangle to really show up. And I'm just softening that line as it proceeds into the rest of the canvas. And next, I'm going to paint a second line next to that. And I'm using the narrow side of the brush, so it's a thin line. And now I'm going to do this burst out from the point, and I'm just doing lines, and I'm dividing each section by half as I go so that I have nice even spacing. I do a point that I can aim towards, and that helps me go in the right direction. And now I'm getting the hang of it. I'm just kind of cruising. The bright brush helps me stay a little bit more steady than a line or a round brush. And I use my pinky for support. I put my pinky down on the canvas and brace my hand. And these are not perfect, and that's okay. That's kind of how I like it. Now I've switched to a small round brush, and I'm doing a row of little dots in that larger area. And that brush was a little bit busted, so I switched to a better brush. And I'm just going to zoom in for you and finish up those dots. Great. Okay. So now I'm going to take the wet paint away off my table, and I'm bringing in the study that I'm going to use of these roses, which again is from a different video. So if you want to learn how to paint these, go ahead and watch that, and I'll leave information about that below. And I'm just cutting these out with as much precision as I can. You can leave a little margin of the background color to give it more of a sticker look, or you can overlap the outer edge of the rose and not have any background included. Now on those thin areas, it gets a little bit tricky, so if you ever tear or cut too far, you can always adhere the part that gets cut off to the canvas right where it would have been attached, if that makes sense. So if something tears, it'll just glue down where you want it to glue down, and don't worry about it. Now I'm playing with composition. I'm going to have those two smaller roses up at the top, and I'm just deciding how I want these other two roses to lay out. Do I want them symmetrical, asymmetrical? And I do something crazy. I cut that one in half, and I got 2 for 1 out of it, and it lines up really nice with the edge of my canvas. And while I was doing that, I decided that the bottom is still colorful enough that I could do a second triangle. So here I am essentially replicating the design that I used up at the top. So applying that paint down, kind of fanning it out with a dry brush technique as the paint runs out on the bristles. And then I've got my round brush. It was a little, like I said, the round brush isn't quite as steady as the bright brush, which is like a short, flat brush. So eventually I switch up again, but I'm doing the top first so that I don't have to reach over it to do the lines. They're under it, and I don't have to reach over wet paint. So here you can kind of see that my hand's a little bit wobbly, and I'm just dividing those sections again in half. And I think here, yeah, I switch brushes to that small bright brush, or you can use a flat brush, and then you can see that that really does help stabilize my line work a little bit, and I'm able to go faster because it does hold more paint. And just cruising along at this point, almost done. And I'm going to reinforce that white on the outside for contrast again, so that we do see that triangle as a darker entity. All right, so now I'm just arranging my roses at the height that I want them, and I love how those two triangles kind of merge onto that center rose. I'm using acrylic gel medium. It's the regular consistency of gel medium, because this watercolor paper is so thick, and because it's thicker, I have to work with it a little bit longer than normal papers like I did in my background. So this is a thicker medium, it's going to dry clear, and I just have to sort of massage it with my brush, and that paper will adhere down once it really starts to grab the back of that paper and the fibers in the paper. Here we go. Smoothing things out from the center outwards. And this paper is so thick, you're not going to get any wrinkles or ripples in the paper. It's just going to lay down super flat, but you just have to make sure that the edges don't start to curl up, and that's why I just work it over a little bit longer until it starts to really seal itself down flat. And here's the last one. And all of these leaves and roses are kind of pointing the eye around, and then the triangles are bringing the eye back into the center. So I love how it turned out. I love this composition. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this process. I had a lot of fun with this mixed media piece, and I encourage you to try it out. If you found this valuable, you might like to leave a donation to show your appreciation. I usually teach in the classroom with a registration fee, but right now I'm just having a good time making these tutorials more accessible. So if you can, it would help so much to be compensated for my work through donations. If you can't donate today, you can still help by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video on your social media to help me spread the love. You can also leave me a comment to let me know what you're interested in learning how to paint. I do have another free gift for you. It's my free online creative care package, which includes more painting videos, art foundation techniques, art supply recommendations, free art business resources, and a discount code good for my original artwork and classes. It's a big value, all for free, and it's linked down below as well. Incorporating a painting study into a mixed media piece is a fun, low-pressure way to bring more of your style into your work. No matter where you are in your art journey, remember, the most important thing is to show up and get started with an open mind. Practice, and you will learn something new every time. Happy painting, much love.